This podcast is brought to you by EnergyX. Are you tired of paying huge rates to the big cloud providers? Are you worried about being booted off a cloud platform if your company doesn't meet their ever-shifting standards? Ready to step up your data security and disaster recovery game? Well, ladies and gentlemen, your new cloud is ready. Introducing xCloud, the scalable, resilient computing cloud that is also actually affordable. It's high-performance compute for half the cost. HPC for HTC. xCloud from Red Team is opening a beta program for new cloud computing customers, and that means you, my friend. The xCloud is powered by the XMDC immersion-cooled modular data center from EnergyX. I've seen this data center in operation, and it is a total game changer. So if you want more information about the beta launch, go to the URL in the description. Type in promo code BETA, B-E-T-A, for 50% off of your first instance. And so the URL is going to be digitalwildcatters.com/EnergyX. What is going on, Wildcatters? Welcome back to another episode of the Oil and Gas Startups Podcast. Today, we do not have a startup. I think Deloitte is much larger than that at this point. I think everybody knows you guys. Amy, you have the title of the world's longest title, I think. Let me go through it. Let me see if I nail it. So you're the vice chair, U.S. Energy and Chemicals leader, and the Houston managing partner for Deloitte. Is that correct?
That is correct, Jake.
All right. So we nailed that. We got that out of the way. That was one thing. I didn't want to butcher that, right? So we met, you guys invited me to come do a tour at your greenhouse probably about a year ago, I think. What a cool facility. It's my understanding that that's what you use for clients or maybe even potential new clients to kind of walk them through. It's a very just cool, immersive experience. What was the genesis of that?
Sure. Well, so this new generation greenhouse we could call it powered by energy and industrial. So it has a real industry bent to it, if you will. But it's available for all companies and industries, and we do use that. We have over 40 greenhouses around the world.
Wow.
14 in the U.S. And it's all based on the psychology of learning. And that when you take humans out of their normal element, especially now away from Zoom and Teams or virtual work and thinking, when you put them together to solve a common problem and give them an interactive type experience, when you bring in all your senses, and we have as you know, when you went through the tour, there's this manifesto breakthrough in terms of what does it take to help human beings change to coalesce around, whatever their new objective or problem they're trying to solve is. And it may sound far-fetched, but what I've witnessed happening in those experiences is very rewarding for us to help people solve problems, to move to the next chapter. And as you and I are talking about today, lots of new chapters unfolding around the world, and human beings need those opportunities to come together to experience the art of the possible. And as you saw, we have different learning spaces, if you will, there where you can actually, our immersive dome where you can actually experience, new cases, new opportunities, demonstration spaces where you can, check out demos, like as you saw, our kind of films around drone, capabilities, virtual VR, decarbonization tools, cybersecurity tools. So all things to help our clients think around possible solutions and alternatives they might not have thought about.
I love it. So I definitely want to dive into your backstory. We were just talking about how you're from Columbus. I was just there earlier this week. Before we do that, what is where do you spend your time? Obviously, you've got a lot of responsibilities. You've got the entire Houston office. You've got this whole energy division. What do you spend your time on?
Sure. Well, the industry role is for the U.S. So obviously, it's not a global role, but nonetheless, I do travel quite a bit. And what's exciting to me, especially since there's just, even during the pandemic, there was a real desire by senior executives to meet in person, to talk about the problems that challenge us. And as you know, the evolution of the industry is underway. We power the world. And so there could not be a more critical time for us to be discussing what are the obstacles, what are the roadblocks that need to happen for the industry to help the world progress. So I love meeting with clients. I love having to getting to help facilitate experiences in our innovation center. And that's my favorite, building our teams. I spent a lot of time working on our internal team development. And, we're growing quite a bit. And it's not just, energy and chemicals is a very broad topic, as you can imagine. But like, for instance, it's not chemicals anymore. It's chemicals and advanced materials. It's not just energy. It's oil, gas, mining, packaging, metals, all huge segments with huge opportunities and challenges. So my being able to bring the best of Deloitte from all the, different expertise, different service lines. For those of your viewers who don't know I heard it's called Deloitte the other day. So what we do is, people don't realize we're an over $60 billion global organization. And with, 4 key businesses in the United States, audit and assurance, tax, consulting, and financial and risk advisory. And under all those things is this underlying theme of helping companies. Now, and you mentioned at the beginning that this wasn't a startup, but what we love is that really we start up a lot of different services to help companies. So we're very reactive to whatever might be going on. Like, for instance, the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Very quickly we worked to figure out what that meant and what opportunities it presented for our clients, helping them re-look at their models, that things that weren't, cost beneficial or even feasible just a few years ago. Now they're taking second and third looks. So to me, that's exciting, helping bring progress.
I'm so excited to dive into just all the things that you're seeing. I mean, I think you, especially meeting with clients, and you're constantly on the road, you're talking to a lot of people. So I'm excited to dive into the challenges that your clients have and what you're seeing in the space and what people are optimistic about. First, let's dive into, how do we get here? Like, what's your backstory?
Sure. Well, I'm one of those Texans who got here as soon as I could. I'm from a large family of 8 children. I'm number 7. I get asked that a lot. Not sure what that means, but I'm very blessed that I was born on a farm just north of Columbus, Ohio, and had a great upbringing in terms of faith, family, friends, and an incredible work ethic that we all had to work, and I developed very early on a bookworm mentality, because we all had chores, all had things we needed to do, but I decided really early on that I was not a fan of manual labor, I should say. Sorry. And I wanted to get the best education I could get, and my parents enabled that, and we really had a love of reading and love of education and being the best. No matter what you're going to do in life, doing your best every day was just a constant. And so I grew up wanting to travel the world, and I went to Ohio State. I mentioned that I've been a runner since a young age, running on the Ohio Track Club, and then through high school and college, and had the pleasure of getting to run cross country and track at Ohio State. And all those experiences made me tougher, made me ready to get out in the world. And at the moment I was graduating, at that moment in the early 80s, it was booming in Texas and busting, if you will, or, and not a great economy in the Midwest. And so there was a real drive to bring CPA eligible candidates to Texas. And I thought, sure, I'll try it. I thought I would, be going to Chicago, the next largest city, but ended up in Texas and fell in love, and have had. It was very interesting, Jake, that I interned in a boom, right? And it was go, and I just was enthralled with, at that moment, I was working with a lot of smaller companies, founder run, wildcatters. I mean, in a lot of attendant service, or like oil field service, barge operators, consumer retail. I was really was blessed that I got to experience a lot of things, mostly on the smaller side, and I learned so much from that, and that mentality of survival. Because then when I returned after I graduated full time, it busted, huge bust.
Yep.
And seeing so many of those, those amazing people struggle and survive was, again, a huge learning opportunity for me. And so I think I've been through, maybe 5 or 6 cycles now since then. And I remain excited by this frontier, this industry, that frontier mentality for, and as you know, Houston is one of the most diverse cities. It is the most diverse city in the US, where, 1 out of every 4 of our citizens was not born here. And so for me, that continuing excitement around seeing people come here from all over the world and be successful. And with this, the startups you're working with, there are lots of people who are hungry and excited to take that engineering expertise, that biotech expertise, whatever it is, and build something bigger. That I find that really exciting. And I think being here in Houston in particular is like the nexus of that. And I think I'm hoping we'll not only continue to be the energy capital of the world, but the evolution, the energy evolution center.
I think 100%. I think that's what you mentioned is I don't think people realize how diverse Houston is unless you live here.
Right.
I don't think that we get a lot of respect for that until people actually come here. And then also the food too. We have the best food in the entire world, which is amazing when you live here, but then you travel and it's like everything else just leave you wanting more. You're like, I get better food at home.
Yeah. Well, the fusion, right? I mean, who would have guessed that combining Vietnamese cuisine with Cajun would be this delicious thing that my family loves, which is, Cajun crawfish. I'm sorry, Vietnamese Cajun crawfish.
So good. So good.
Outstanding.
So how long have you been at Deloitte?
21 years.
Okay. So you didn't start your career at Deloitte. Where were you at before that?
So I started as an auditor at Arthur Andersen.
Okay.
I became a partner and had the opportunity to go to Austin in the height of the .com era.
Okay.
And to reopen the office there, became the managing partner there. And in that moment, got to work with lots of startups. And, I remember being told several times that I just didn't get it. Cause I would ask, entrepreneurs would come in and say, we need 3 years of financials because we're going to go public. And in 6 months, we'll do this and that. And I would say, well, how are you going to make money? And they're like, Amy, you just don't get it. It's all about eyeballs and clicks and most of those companies don't exist anymore. But I learned a lot in that moment. But most importantly, what I learned is that when Andersen went out of business in 2002, our clients trusted me and my team. And I will always be grateful that they had trust and faith in us to continue serving them. And in that moment, I was able to take our entire practice over to Deloitte and have been thrilled to be here ever since. It's been great.
So did you start off on the financial side of Deloitte or did you go straight into consulting?
No, I started off on the financial side, but it quickly became apparent that I'd been working with a lot of large companies, and that's what I love to do in terms of helping companies grow, and as they get more sophisticated, helping them with really sophisticated transformation journeys, and so you might say, well, how did you end up as an energy and chemical industry leader? I think that time that I spent in quote unquote high tech industry actually was really great for me in terms of seeing how really technology permeates everything. And honestly, most technology companies, they're manufacturers and marketers, right? I mean, the semiconductor companies are manufacturers. And so that common if you cut through, refiners are manufacturers. There's a lot of commonality. And do you need deep expertise? Absolutely. And frankly, I'm so blessed that we have so many amazing specialists and very deep pockets of expertise at Deloitte that I get to bring those to the table while kind of bringing this kind of I like to think I bring a macro oversight to our clients by being able to bring the very best from around the world. And I love that too, that this career has enabled me to travel and experience lots of different environments and backgrounds. And I think that helps me bring more rich examples to our clients.
So on the consulting side, for those who don't understand, go back to your comment of a Deloitte or whatever they called it. What are the things that the companies come to you guys for? What are you guys known for?
Oh my, it depends what your needs are, right? If you're, as I mentioned earlier, if you're looking at doing, thinking about a transaction or investment, you might come to us to do important due diligence work, valuation, tax modeling, technology modeling, all kinds, to help you assess the good, bad, and unknowns of a potential opportunity. If you're a company that's thinking about going public, you might need help to become IPO ready, right? Which are in our audit insurance world, we help do that. If you're talking about a company-wide transformation, you want someone who can bring all the aspects that you need to think about to that. So, for instance, you need to think about controls and risks and cyber considerations. You need to talk about the interaction, the interface. You think about your supply chain, your platforms. There's so many things, Jake, that need to come into play to make an overall project successful.
So what are you seeing today? Like, what are the trends? Let's talk about the challenges.
Sure.
What are the challenges that you're seeing with most of the clients that you're working with?
Oh, wow. So
what's top of mind?
Well, obviously it changes depending in the organization, but I can't remember a conversation in the last month in the boardroom or with senior clients that didn't include AI.
Okay. People
are talking about AI. People are talking about geopolitics and the impact on pricing and supply chain.
So we're talking about more about this, the supply chain for GPUs, say like the NVIDIA manufacturers, in order to be able to meet the demand for AI.
Well, yes, on the AI side, that's correct. But I meant even broader than that, just in terms of
energy supply chain.
Energy supply chain, energy security, energy stability, pricing. What's the impact of rising prices in particular? What's the impact of lower than expected demand and recovery in China?
So is a conversation centered around using AI to answer those questions, or how AI will impact those things?
Okay. Well, so when I said AI was top of mind, then I skipped to the economics. So AI. AI is a fascinating topic, and I want to just preface my remarks by saying it's a huge mistake to think about it as a project. That it is a transformative way that that's going to change the world in terms of how we work.
Step change. This is like going from not having the internet to having the internet, and like this isn't just another tool that you kind of layer in. I mean, this is extremely game changing. I mean, this is arguably my favorite topic to talk about these days.
Well, good, because I brought some info to talk to you about that.
I'm such a nerd on AI. We all use it. Everybody here has multiple AI tools that they use. It's been completely transformative for us in terms of just being able to extract things out of our heads and to be able to articulate them better, particularly a lot of creative work. But we also use it for, high-powered data analysis and a bunch of other things. But it's been cool to see, when I'm not sitting here podcasting, I spend a lot of my time talking to executives of various oil and gas companies. And I asked the same question, particularly over the last, call it 6 months. And this has been the same answer. Everybody's thinking about AI.
Absolutely. Well, so I heard our global AI leader was in town last week visiting with some of our clients. And he used an analogy that has stuck with me all week. And that's the way to think about the discontinuity of this is if you think back, the last time this happened was the invention of the steam engine. Until that moment in history, only human beings and plow animals could really produce, energy or create products. Okay, that's the steam engine sparked the Industrial Revolution. And what's interesting is he said, if you could Google what was the media like around the time of that invention, it would tell you that for 30 years it was doomsday. That people said this is going to replace the peasants in the field and take away their jobs, their economic opportunity, and it didn't do any of that. It improved the world's living conditions, and that's the way we should think about this. In terms of this is for the first time we can work with whatever you want to call it, software, machines that can think like humans and faster. And so we need to harness that in order to move forward. So, it's being taught, to your point, it's being talked on every podcast, every conference. Companies are adapting to incorporate technology in their day-to-day operations. We're seeing, I don't know any companies that are experimenting in creating large language models. I think we're going to see a real shift in both VR technology and AI, where organizations are going to move away from singularly focused tech toys to enterprise-wide tools. And, speaking specifically about energy companies, it could provide really new opportunities to improve products and services, automate repetitive tasks, and create new and innovative customer experiences. I would like to say that I think there's still some confusion between generative AI and AI. It doesn't simply generate code or text from scratch. It's analyzing the input of the data we've provided it with. And so it can contextualize our queries. And, Gen AI has been around for a while, but ChatGPT took the world by storm last November. And that's what made the greater public sit up and take notice.
Well, it seemed like it was the general consensus of the public is that AI was really kind of like a pipe dream, right? It's something that we've talked about forever. There's been sci-fi films on it for forever. And what ChatGPT did was it was like a Trojan horse into the greater population, because it gave them a tool to where now they could interface with it in such an easy way that all of a sudden you saw it with the user adoption, just how many people were popping on there and how it just literally took the world by storm, and how quickly we got used to that. Like really, really quickly.
Oh yeah.
And now it's part of my daily workflow. I keep ChatGPT open at all times, plus the other AI tools that I have. And I use it for almost every single task because I can do it in a fraction of the time.
Right. Well, and we forget we've been using AI for a while. I mean, every time you call for a car service, think about the technology that goes into triangulating all the vehicles nearby and plotting the route, tracking it along the way, letting you pay, letting you give input. All those things we just take for granted now because they've been around for some years. But that was AI.
It's not entirely new. But man, the models are getting smart. So smart.
But part of the curve to adoption is change management and asking the right questions. And how do you change processes while educating your workforce? We think education is really important. Teaching your people how to ask the right questions so Gen AI can provide useful information.
Prompt engineering
is key.
And
right?
I think that you can even use the AI to teach you prompt engineering as well. Things like, so with ChatGPT, they just released their generative AI for images with DALL-E 3 in ChatGPT. And the cool thing about that versus something like, I don't know if you're familiar with Midjourney, but it's the same thing. You create the images.
Right.
With Midjourney, you had to nail your prompt. Exactly. You had to learn over time. But with DALL-E and ChatGPT, you just described what you want. Then it creates your prompts and then gives you the outputs. And so it's cool to see that it's like this inception AI within AI.
That's right. So, I'll make sure to give you, Deloitte just recently published a generative AI dossier that highlights use cases around 6 major industries to give people a feeling of the art of the possible. And so I'm happy to share that with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it shows you some low-hanging fruit, basically. And like, for instance, knowledge retrieval. How many times do you spend reading reports, executive summaries? So you think of the executive of the future. This executive reads, say, 12 news sources a day, 20 reports, 3 podcasts, needs to edit however many more. And then you can train the AI tools to read all of these things and then have it give you a summary. And then, think about taking it to the field. Process engineers, maintenance technicians. Your technician has a list of tasks. Let's say they're about to change a pump and AI is fed with data so the output can say something like, hey, when you change this pump, your colleagues needed this list of parts, or reference those pages in the manual, or here are the top things they did wrong. So ultimately, you're going to have fewer mistakes, more efficiency, and likely fewer injuries. And
that's what we need.
Yeah.
Right. There's so many benefits. I could easily spend this entire conversation talking about AI.
I could too.
I know you guys do a lot of other work
yeah.
too. Let's switch gears to what I'm just going to make the assumption, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure energy transition, or energy addition as I call it, is obviously
evolution.
Whatever your flavor is of that. I'm sure that's obviously, we know that's top of mind with a lot of leaders. And so what kind of work are you guys doing around that?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because we have a great research and insights organization that we have a recurring way to tap in to executives around the world in the industry. And so we recently just published another paper, kind of following up on last year's. And I think I may have mentioned this a little bit about that. Last year we came up with, we did a survey and found that 1.35 trillion of surplus cash was being generated in that moment by the largest oil energy companies in the world. And it outlined the tremendous performance of the oil and gas industry in 2022 based on continued operational efficiency and capital discipline. And the great thing is, that hasn't stopped. Those really, those were big numbers in free cash flow. So it's a year later. It's fun to be sitting here, Jake, to discuss some of the outcomes since then. That capital availability isn't the stumbling block to the future. So that's important. The global upstream sector is poised to generate an impressive 2.5 to 4.6 trillion in free cash flows from 2023 to 2030. And that's without taking into account whatever is about to happen right now as a result of the latest geopolitical changes. So that's a lot that can go towards this evolution. So we updated the survey, and the expectations from the industry showed that the future. I really believe the future of energy holds monumental and diverse expectations from the oil and natural gas industries. And even on the flip side of that, you have folks saying negatively, yeah, but that they're still only spending 1.8 per share in global clean energy spending, and that that might be true, but it's growing. But you also have to look at what that money's doing in terms of the big projects, the big things like CCUS and hydrogen hubs. Those couldn't happen without big players. And so that might seem like a small percentage, but it's growing and it's meaningful. And on the other hand, oil and gas players would cite a 28% average reduction in Scope 1 and 2 emissions over the last 3 years, let alone the last 10 years, where the U.S. in particular has made in Europe made really meaningful reductions. And I think that makes people feel confident about achieving a 50 to 60% reduction in emissions by 2030. So going into this latest study around convergence and divergence, we called it, there are key areas of agreement between oil and gas management and institutional investors. So this latest research was actually interviewing both institutional investors and senior oil and gas execs. And, although we found that their paths, the net zero, might not be completely aligned, there is a shared consensus on the industry's potential to achieve overarching goals. So notably, 75% of the surveyed groups had confidence in the industry's aptitude, I should say, to harmonize economic and environmental considerations. Other areas of agreement were new and improved financing mechanisms to plug this capital gap. Demand for low energy needs to be increased versus we need robust commercial models to achieve economies of scale. We need to leverage critical mineral and controlling clean supply chains. We haven't talked about that much, that minerals are an important part of this conversation, and that could offer a unique way to play in the renewable space. And then conductive and well-defined policies remain a cornerstone for accelerating the adoption. The IRA is truly, a positive development. On the other hand, we have not seen the same positive developments in permitting and regulatory. Yeah. And you need that in order to benefit from
the IRA. Is unique. We've talked extensively about that on podcasts, on webinars. That was one of the biggest topics because it had just, kind of come out prior to Fuse last year. And so I think we had like 2 or 3 panels that really kind of dove deep into that. We had people from DOE kind of like diving into it. And so I think that as I've spent more time marinating on the last year and really learning more about it, there's a lot of positive implications for hydrogen and for renewables and for CCUS and really a lot of the new energy stuff. There's also a lot of implications for oil and gas companies on the methane emission side, right? To the point to where I did a webinar with Shad Frazier, who leads operations for Endeavor on the Permian, and we dove deep into that. And there's some pending regulations and some technologies around like the LiDAR used to detect the emissions that if the industry doesn't kind of, I don't want to say like fight back, but give them more guidance into, hey, this regulation is not reasonable. What that means is that potentially stripper well operators, which is about 80% of like the operators that we have in this country, will become uneconomical. And it's something that like nobody's talking about. And so it's interesting. So there's like two sides of it. And I think that what they were wanting to accomplish with it was extremely noble. However, I think that there's still some things that kind of have to be hashed out kind of over time. But I mean, these companies are making just massive investments into retrofitting various equipment on well sites to be able to lower the emissions. I mean, that's their product, right? They don't want to release that to the atmosphere anyways. But I think a lot of them don't get as much credit as they deserve for how much effort and capital they've poured into that.
Dude, I agree. I agree. And I wish this industry had been doing a better education all along of the facts of what the industry does positively. And it's unfortunate. I was just at the World Petroleum Congress in Calgary 2 weeks ago, and or now called WPC Energy. And it was fascinating how globally this industry really does power the world and is part of positive solutions. And yet the activists and protesters who are there were really misinformed around how vital and the progress that's being made for, just not understanding that 96% of everything manufactured in the United States, 96% of everything, the devices, the clothes, makeup, everything you can think, toys, everything medical devices, everything you can think of has petrochemicals in it.
Yeah. So this is going to be a side tangent, but this is something I'm very passionate about. And so like you said, we have done a terrible job as an industry really telling our story. And so the key to storytelling is to move hearts and minds, right? And as an industry of extremely technical people, lots of engineers, we like to fight back against activists who are probably uninformed about the facts with scientific facts and figures, right? However, scientific facts and figures, while they are true, don't necessarily move the hearts and minds of the younger generation, right? And so for decades, and for as long as I can remember before I ever came to the industry, we as an industry really didn't do ourselves any favors there. We didn't talk about it. When we did, it was with these scientific facts and figures. And then over time, this movement that began to demonize particularly the oil and gas industry continued to grow because they understood the right kinds of tactics and storytelling that was able to mobilize people around like this movement. And you can't necessarily fault them for, I mean, I grew up in College Station. I was surrounded by oil and gas, but I didn't know anything about it until I came into the industry, right? And so once again, the industry hasn't really done a great job of telling its story and all the benefits that we do. These people, I think that they want to believe in something, and that's just unfortunately that the narrative has kind of gotten away from us, and we as an industry just haven't stepped up and really played the same game with social media. Like, okay, let's look
Precisely.
Let's look at any of the large. It could be super majors, it could be large independents, and let's just go to their social media. Anybody can go to their social media, and if you run the social media, I'd love to talk to you. It's let's talk about Earth Day. Let's talk about the small community impact stuff, but nobody's tackled the big thing of like, why do we exist? And that's led to a divestment of capital into oil and gas. That's led to a talent drain. And not only do we have a hard time attracting people to this industry, we have a hard time retaining people. There was a massive study that just came out that said that like 65% of the people that were surveyed, and like 35,000 people across oil and gas, said that they would leave the industry within 5 years. And that all stems from us not
negative
talking.
Perception.
Yeah, negative perception because we're not talking about
especially
it.
Because to your point, on social media, it's so easy to convince people to be against things, to upset people, versus
that's what gets clicks too.
Yeah, versus being part of the positive solution.
Yeah.
And talking about energy justice and fairness, we don't talk much about the billions of people who still don't have electricity. And going back to WPC conference for a moment, I was honored to lead a panel that was very international of around the future of refining. And it was very geographically representative. We had the head of refiners for Africa. We had the assistant minister of energy from Saudi Arabia. We had Western Europe represented, and we had Eastern Europe represented of refiners. And it was so interesting, the different status of those entities. For instance, the gentleman from Africa said, we represent less than 3%. I think he said 2.8% of the world's emissions. Yet, we forecast that our energy needs, especially in oil and gas, are going to significantly grow in order for our people for them to have just basic standard of living. And yet, because of the anti-fossil fuel sentiment, especially in Europe, we can't get capital to improve the refineries we have, to make them, to leapfrog ahead to more efficient, lower carbon ways of producing. We can't get the capital to do that because of the antagonism toward funding any sort of anything related to fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, and this goes back to our conversation before we started recording with like Bitcoin mining, is there are groups, one company in particular called Gridless. So out of the billions of people that don't have electricity, almost 90% of them in the world are in Africa, right? And so companies like this are taking their own capital and investing into energy infrastructure in Africa, right? Where a lot of the times this, let's just say it generates, 10 megawatts. Well, they only use 1 megawatt, and 9 megawatts a day is just wasted, right? And so the Bitcoin miners are able to come in and actually buy that from the substation and then provide more prosperity to the local region. It's like extremely game changing, because now you're removing having these people in Europe who don't want to invest. You've got these Bitcoin miners who are able to say, we're coming in and completely changing the landscape for this village, right? There's a cool
that is
short film that just came out called Stranded that Alana Media via a good friend of ours just produced. And it's really, really moving to see how the innovation is happening there in Africa.
That's great to hear. But see, that's a positive story.
Such a positive story.
Such a positive story.
So we talked about.
I haven't seen it on Instagram. Not that I'm, spending as many hours on social media as others. But
what are you seeing in? We've talked about energy evolution. We've talked about AI. Outside of that, in terms of like, because you guys have DOT and you have like this cool greenhouse, and I've seen all the technologies and the various partners and stuff that you guys have worked with. What are you seeing in terms of like energy tech trends?
I'd say what's exciting is that technology is moving down the cost curve.
Yeah. 100%.
Supply chain costs have increased significantly. And so, how is that impacting projects being bankable? So technology producers have to up production of electrolyzers and technology of transformation of hydrogen into other molecules. It's a steep challenge, and the cover's not declining yet, but we need to secure supply before we can start collaboration, creating long-term relationships with providers and securing delivery. Demand. I know that's not the technology answer, but fixing the demand question is key. That's true. But back to technology. Technology and providers need to align. We need more demonstration projects. Like the more you can get projects started to deploy technology and then perfect, the hope is that others will follow and the technology will start to become more sustainable, profitable, and obtainable. Talking about technology around these lower carbon, big ideas. We need more collaboration. You need a value chain ecosystem of all the players, raw material, water management, OEM, end users, transport operators, to get these projects really moving.
Yeah, we look at today with shale in particular, right? We've got cheap, we've got abundant energy, we're blowing and going as an industry. But what did it take to get here? We torched essentially $200 billion in capital over 10 years to really get to this point, right? And I call that the cost of innovation, right? There is a cost that comes along with it. And so, yes, there are a ton of these technologies that currently do not make sense and do not make money. But does that mean that we shouldn't invest in them? And we're seeing massive investment come into it. But like you said, we're hitting breakthroughs in certain technologies. We just saw a massive breakthrough with Fervo Energy on geothermal just in the last few months. I think it was like 2 months ago. Prove their technology works, which is absolutely game changing for the entire industry. I think we're going to continue to see more massive breakthroughs on the carbon capture side. I think we're seeing it on the hydrogen side. I kind of have this theory. paying attention to what some of the automotive CEOs are saying around how hydrogen hybrids with electric motors, I think, are probably going to be the future of cars rather than just pure play EVs. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
we do need to see significantly more. I think we are. This stat's a little bit old, but I know it was like 2 years ago, less than 1% of venture capital was going into material science. And it's kind of hard to do anything without carbide and cobalt and graphene and like all these things.
I mentioned advanced materials before. Yeah. We think that's where chemistry is going.
Yeah. Yeah. There's going to be a couple probably really big players that are going to grow. I would anticipate are going to grow in that space. So it's something definitely to pay attention to.
Yeah. Well, a little bit more about tech trends. I mean, I mentioned the technology difficulties we're seeing with the large, hydrogen and carbon capture projects. But, we're also looking at the landscape of what could disrupt the landscape in the next 18 to 24 months, and how ready is the industry to adopt new technology. So, we love data, and we make a great effort to provide context around the insights and learning from that data. And I mentioned our research and insights team who come from all disciplines. One thing I think that's really interesting in the industry value chain is immersive virtual experiences. And you saw a little bit of that at our innovation center. We really help these immersive technologies can help streamline operations and help teams collaborate and learn. I'm always going to be a proponent, obviously, of seeing people face to face, but VR technology is a game changer for energy companies. And when you think about a field engineer or maintenance technician being able to augment reality and provide access to remote sites, you're reducing the need for travel while allowing experts to really inspect and troubleshoot machines easily with potential to develop immersive. So as I mentioned before, I think quicker adoption of those kinds of technologies and abilities have all kinds of positive
So I think my view of AR, VR has changed now that AI has kind of to the point to where it is. And so like seeing what Meta's doing with like the new Ray-Ban glasses of having essentially like a mini dashboard within the glasses, but you can speak to the AI, I think about how that would be even more convenient than me consistently querying on my actual computer, being able to prompt it, ask it certain questions, and then still being able to like keep your hands free to like do other things. And so I think that's probably what I'm most excited about, whether to be able to, either hear, repeat certain things back to me or being able to like see it, with inside the glasses. I think that's definitely game changing.
Oh yeah. It's fun. And then, and then back to AI in exploration, there are just resource-rich areas that can be more quickly identified when AI models are front-loaded, like geophysical and geological data, using synthetic seismic data generation. The large companies have already been doing a lot of that. That's not new. But the generative modeling of hydrocarbon reservoirs, how that can optimize exploration efforts and increase resource extraction efficiency, frankly, limiting disturbance to the environment.
Mm-hmm. How cool would it be if we discover like some other major basin that's like right beneath their nose, like with AI?
Completely possible. If I cannot believe I've not mentioned the innovation gap. I would say one of the biggest things we have found is that if you do all the math around climate change and the technologies we know today, and we know we need huge projects in order to make that leap. Even taking those into account, Jake, there's a huge innovation gap. And so I think the R&D underway, especially with the clean tech startups, is there will be answers in that. I mean, I know I'm an optimist, but I think all the evidence points to when there's this big an innovation gap in the world, the smartest people are rushing to fill that.
And I think also we're seeing, you talked about the, how technology is getting cheaper and cheaper, but it's also there's lower barriers to entry for entrepreneurs, right? To where not that long ago, like just kind of getting up and running, right? To build a very simple app was wildly expensive with cloud costs and infrastructure and a bunch of other things. And that's consistently dropped and dropped and dropped. Low code, no code, AI, various things that you can use. And I think more and more people are seeing that it's not as and don't get me wrong, entrepreneurship is still extremely hard, but not as hard as it was from a technical perspective.
Right. Well, and there's this support system, right?
Yeah.
People like you who are amplifying and helping optimize, spreading. But that didn't exist not that long ago.
Yeah, and you were talking about before we started recording, we went from, was it like 20 accelerators and stuff
to
like
over 50 today and growing here in Houston alone.
There's never been like just more resources. I will say, just considering, a lot of my days are spent talking to E&Ps, on their side, they do feel like they're constantly inundated with like new technologies and stuff. And so we've been kind of throwing around some ideas like how we can help companies kind of like sift through the noise to find the things that are actually going to help move the needle.
Well, maybe that's an idea for a startup, a pre-screener of new technologies.
Well, I've got something to show you after we get off the mic. Well, Amy, this has been awesome. I could just sit here and just talk about this all day. I know you're busy.
I could too, but as you can tell, I love this topic. I love this frontier. I love that Houston is, I think, in the midst of a technological renaissance.
It is. I think we're going to see a lot more manufacturing here as well. I think the cost of that's going to come down, especially with the advances in new technologies and robotics and things like that. But it's exciting to be in Houston. The downside is the humidity and the weather for a few months a year, but the trade-off, not telling anybody this, is just the opportunity, and especially in this space. Like you said, there's nothing that replaces face-to-face interaction. And I think to be able to have those collisions that lead to, building of relationships, that lead to just big things happening, you can't have that same velocity of collisions really anywhere else for the energy industry. No. And so I'm thankful for my last, 11 years here in Houston. And I think that
I'm very thankful for my over 40 years here now. It's I could not have dreamed of a better place to be on this frontier.
It's been awesome. Well, Amy, thanks for making the time. If you guys like the episode, take 2 seconds, share with all your friends, and we will catch you guys in the next episode.